Fitz of Writing.
Good evening, Scribbles and Scratches of the Fitz of Writing community. I am your host tonight, Sean Fitzgerald, and I'm sitting here with the here we go. And I'm sitting here tonight with Miles Carnegie. He is a self-described indie horror author, recovering corporate drone, and we both share the mantle of mediocre social media user. How are you doing tonight, Miles?
I'm doing splendid. How about yourself, sir?
I don't have a complaint outside of it being the day of the week that it is. I don't really want to get into all that, though. How we generally do this, I'm excited to talk to you just because you're the first person that I've had a chance to talk to who I would say is writing horror. And some of the ways that you described your writing and the things you write about seem pretty interesting. But just to kind of bring everyone up to speed, why don't you tell everybody who's listening and watching where your story begins?
Oh, so I've been probably writing off and on since I was a little kid. Now, as far as articulating it, putting into real books and novellas, that's been a more recent thing, thanks to COVID. I think I've had a lot of ideas, but unfortunately my short attention spans never let me kind of materialize those. But yeah, I would say probably in the last 5 to 8 years, I kind of got to that age where, plus in the corporate world that I live in most of my life, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write several books, and I'm just going to tell the world what I think about everything. Took a lot of these stories that I've had throughout the years, and finally kind of went through and started looking at doing the real work, which is outlining these stories, figuring out all the plot points and things like that. So it's been an interesting journey. I think it's just the planets aligned, because any other time for me to have the time, the discipline, and the wherewithal to kind of push through this probably wouldn't have happened. It just did. I kind of hit a point in my life where I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm going to put these to paper. I'm not getting any younger. So yeah, it kind of started with that, and literally just opened that gate up. And I wrote kind of one short story. I was like, well, that was fun. What else can I write? And then the ideas just kind of started coming. And yeah, so here we are. I think last I checked, I haven't wrote a full novel yet. I haven't quite been able to dedicate that much time to like 100,000 words. But most of my stuff is more like short story novella stuff.
Okay.
So I'm getting there.
Well, out of everything that you've put out, have you struck out to do any traditional publishing, or have you just been handling self-publishing and taking care of it on your own?
I pretty much have been self-publishing so far, and literally my goal at first was, hey, I've got all these stories bouncing around my head. I've told my kids these stories before. I've told other people, and they're like, oh, that's pretty wild. That's kind of that's something you should probably put out there. And I'm like, somebody's probably written something about that or whatever. So yeah, I literally probably in the last year decided to sit down and go, hey, there's this thing called Amazon, Kindle publishing stuff. Started looking into that, and some of the other self-publishing tools. I'm like, wow, this is a lot easier and simpler than I imagined. Which obviously, when you make it that easy, you have lots of people doing it. So suddenly it's like the little fish in the giant pond, and everything that goes with that. So, but no, I have not really pursued going after having any actual publishers. I mean, I've submitted stuff, things like that. One of my stories got picked up. SiriusXM is doing a thing for October where they have somebody come in and do a reading of the short stories. So I'd sent in one of my short stories from my book, Wrong Channels, and they liked it. And they said, hey, can we use this? I'm like, absolutely. So slowly but surely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you know when that's airing?
I believe it might be like next week or the week after. Unfortunately, I don't subscribe to SiriusXM. because I would love for them to send me that sound bite, because it's a short story. And I think they said it was going to be like 10 minutes long, maybe. But I don't know if it's I need to reach back out to them and see, like, hey, it just feels weird. It's like, I'm not a subscriber, but can you send me this sound bite?
Right. At least give me.
But I'll eventually track it down somewhere.
Yeah, at least give me a link for a 7-day free trial.
Yeah. Something where I can at least go, hey, look. But yeah, I've done that. Kind of along that you were asking about the horror, kind of what's inspired that and where I've started. I mean, I've had some paranormal experiences happen to me as a kid, and as I've gotten older, I actually kind of, as a side gig, not as much anymore. The wife and I do go ghost hunting occasionally, but not, like I said, not as much. But we do some of that. That's kind of enjoyable. Although, a lot of people see the TV shows and go, "Wow, this is really cool." People find demons every 5 minutes, and really what it is a majority of the time, it's sitting in a room, an old dusty moldy building for 24 hours, and maybe you might catch one little thing. So it's a lot of sitting in old buildings. But excuse me, I like the architecture. So I'm more of a where my wife is more into the metaphysical stuff and more, I guess, a believer. I'm more the skeptic. So I just go in and go, oh, this is a cool building. Look at this architecture. What's the history here, and that kind of stuff, and pick up the vibes there. But more often than not, I'm like, yeah, you're not seeing orbs. You're not seeing a demon. It's this or that. So
that's dust on the lens.
It's fun, but yeah, exactly.
I like this building. I'm going to write about it.
And part of that helps. Yeah. So it definitely helps me as far as like scenarios for books. I'm like, oh wow, okay, this could be a cool, environment for later on down the road. And plus, I'm kind of grounded and so, like, a lot of my stories, it's like they have a lot of like science, technology grounding stuff. So it's like, it's not super far out there in the future. I don't get super technical in explaining things because, one, I mean, most of the stuff is fake or not real, but there are a lot of things. It's kind of got this Black Mirror vibe, right? Where it's like, especially when I'm talking about AI and things like that, I draw from stuff like the Twilight Zone and the Outer Limits, anything that just kind of gives a twist, or it's like, ooh, oh yeah, it kind of makes people kind of unsettled. I mean, I used to have this weird dream when I was a child that my mom was a robot. Like, literally, this and this maybe explains a lot now that I'm kind of psychoanalyzing myself as we talk. Whereas, like, I would go into a room and the room was totally white. She was in the corner, and this is, I come from a different generation. I'm a child of the 70s and 80s, so like the original Westworld and that, the $6 Million Man with the robots where they take their faces off and it's all the circuits and that image stayed with me forever. I mean, it's the whole Finbot thing, all that. But yeah, I used to have a recurring dream where my mom was one of those, and my mom, being the wonderful, caring mother that she was, picked up on that, and whenever I was misbehaving, would start to pretend to be like that. So, it kind of created that cycle. So there are some of my horror stories, and I love my mom to death, but it's like some of my horror stories, she is a character in some of them. I wrote one, and I know I'm going down a tangent, but we're already there. So in my book Wrong Channels, it's basically a bunch of short horror stories, and some of them are like stories I made up for my kids as they were growing up, and I would just throw stories out there. Some of them are like things that happened to me personally, but I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put a spin of horror on it. So I wasn't the greatest kid growing up. I was kind of a punk. I was pretty notorious as a young child, peeking at my Christmas presents, opening the paper, sealing them back up. I'm sure nobody out there in your audience has ever done anything that horrible, but yeah, I was that kid. So there was one year where my mom finally got fed up with it, and this was the year that I decided, you know what, I'm going to be surprised this year. I'm going to be good. I'm going to refrain from that and not do any of that stuff. So I remember walking in on her, and she was wrapping presents. And she would do this, but typically what she would do is wrap like other people's presents. And I knew when I could come in. And so I happened to just walk in. She was wrapping something. I made a comment about it, going, oh, that's pretty cool. And unbeknownst to me, it was one of my presents. So now in her head, she's like, oh, here you are again doing this. You know, you always ruin this and all. And I'm like, she's like, you probably looked at everything already. And I'm like, I did not, didn't look at anything. And she was already fed up with that. Proceeded to take my presents, throw them all outside, threatened to burn them. God, I'm starting to make my mom sound horrible. No, that's not the case. But so anyways, where I'm getting to is, so that kind of stayed with me. So then that evolved into a story that I call Mrs. Krampus. So it's basically the concept of how she would transform into a Krampus and basically punish me for my wrongdoings. So a lot of that kind of stuff I've had experiences, and some of them are just silly, but some of them are like, you know, I could turn that into a horror story. That'd be kind of fun. And some of it's kind of cute like that and laughable, and some of it's like, man, what is the matter with you? But they say it's therapy if you get it out on paper and, you know, write all that stuff down. So that's what I try to do.
They say that. Yeah. I have yet to.
I don't know who's saying that, but yeah.
Wow, hey.
I mean, it is therapy. It's therapy. It's cool to come up with these characters, and then you kind of get into that world. And for me, it was like there was a couple instances where I knew I had certain characters that I was going to kill off, and I was like starting to get to that point where I'm like, it's coming. I got to start figuring out how this is going to work. You know, this is my story arc. And when I got to it, I'm like, I don't want to do this. This person doesn't deserve this. And it's like, how? And it was like, it had the emotional response to it. It was like, it was pretty wild how that happens. But yeah, it was kind of fun going through that evolution of some of these characters. For me, I don't know if it sounds pompous just or whatever, but I kind of write just because I have these ideas and want to get them on paper. And it's like, if somebody else can enjoy these, great. If not, at least I can say, hey, I wrote these. Here they are for better or for worse. Yeah.
I don't think that sounds pompous at all. It gets them out of your head. Some new ideas can start bouncing around in there. And I mean, it'd be more pompous if you were like a certain jackass who said that I am now immortal because it was me. I'm the jackass.
No.
But whatever. I want to kind of backtrack to the whole it's a therapy thing with one thing that you said in your email when you applied, which was like that horror is the most honest genre. And maybe that isn't necessarily therapeutic in nature by writing a story where everybody dies, but if you feel like you're telling a story that is, you know, in and of its heart honest by telling a horror story, that does have to feel a certain amount of, I don't know, maybe release whenever it gets where it's going. And that has got to be cathartic. So I wanted to see what all you had to say about your statement that that horror is the most honest genre of this kind.
Well, I mean, let's face it, and not to get into politics or things like that, but we're living in some crazy times right now. No matter what your belief systems are, views on whatever, it's kind of crazy. You know, I look around and it's like, it's not good. How can it get any crazier? And then the next day, it's like, I tell my kids, it's like, hold my beer. Every day seems to be that kind of a thing. And it's like, if you would have told me, 20 years ago, this is the world we'd be living in, I'd be like, this is the horror story. This is the fiction novel that you're talking about. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that going on, and it's the honesty. It's kind of cathartic for me, because it's weird when I'm creating these worlds that should be pretty damn scary, but that doesn't feel as scary as the real world. And maybe that's some of the introvert in me coming out, but it's like, I feel safer in these environments I create, even though they're horror stories. And maybe it's because I have a certain amount of control over it. But yeah, like I said, a lot of this came about during COVID. People were basically locked in their homes for a while. A lot of people worked from home or didn't have jobs at all. It was scary times. And that's that's where a lot of the stuff came from. And I kind of started taking notes and was like, you know what, I'm gonna turn these into books, and then eventually got around to it. But yeah, I mean, as far as it's easy for me to say horror is the most honest because that's pretty much all I write. I can't. I can't really talk to like romance is the most honest genre because that's not something I write. Well, although you never know.
I don't know about romance. Well, that's just one guy's take, I guess.
And that's not throwing any shade on any romance novelist people because I know there's it's a very lucrative area and there's lots of fans for that kind of stuff. It's just
Well, sure.
Yeah, my romance novels would be very boring. Somebody would probably end up getting killed.
And then
maybe that'd be true crime, and I could kind of roll into that.
It's a circle of life, though.
Right.
Everything comes back to good old honest horror. So you said that horror is all that you've written. Do you have any aspirations for anything to breach outside of horror? Are you just really comfortable? Is that most of the movies you watch? What kind of set you down that path? I would imagine that you knew that you wanted to write horror when you got started, but where's the why behind that?
So I'd say my sweet spot is, like I said, we were talking before, is kind of technology horror. One of my favorite movies of all times is Aliens, plural. Although all the Aliens movies, I shouldn't say all of them. The first couple were pretty badass. So anything along those lines, the whole claustrophobic, being chased by something, not having control over it. The movies that always kind of, for me, was instead of them always showing the monsters right away, like the Freddys and the Jasons, and the Michael Myers, that's cool. But it's like, okay, you got a guy coming after you. Now, Freddy was a little bit different. He came out during your sleep. He didn't have as much control over that. But that stuff's just kind of like after a while, it's like, okay, now it becomes how creative we can be killing these people, right? And I know we're talking about movies versus books, but kind of the same concept. But where I gravitated towards was like some of the classic monsters. I remember at an early age reading Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and thinking, wow, she was kind of like, she was way ahead of her time. She knew what she was talking about. And then Bram Stoker's Dracula was another one. So I tend to gravitate towards the classical stuff. And a lot of what I did with Primacy was leveraging those characters, because it's like, okay, how do you? There's so many so many vampire stories, werewolf stories. All these archetypes have been done, arguably, or not arguably, but have done probably much better than I could ever do. So it's like, okay, is there any new bits to mine from that? And it's like the whole Primacy story for me was, and love Alan Moore and those guys, was the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. That was a graphic novel. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it was basically, let's take classic literary characters and basically create like an Avengers team. Sure. But it was like Alec Quartermain and Mina Harker and all these people that were like basically public domain characters that they could leverage now. And it was brilliant. The movie was horrible, but the book series was. So like the Primacy series I wrote, sorry, Sean Connery, that was not your best. But my idea for Primacy was, okay, what if you had a company that was like someone like an Elon Musk ran, or even a Steve Jobs, that kind of, but they were like into biomedical cloning and things like that. So that's kind of where I started with this. But instead of cloning people and that, they're actually creating the archetypes of our classic monsters. So in this world, this mythology, vampires, werewolves, creatures from the Black Lagoon, all those Frankenstein's monsters don't exist. Our world doesn't know that. So they are creating these archetypes based on whatever. So it was kind of weird to wrap my head around that, because, everybody knows who those characters are. Everybody knows what Frankenstein is and that, but it's like, what if, and then I went down the path, okay, what if what kind of classic literary character would be a mastermind character that could run this company? Not the mustache twirling villain, but somebody like that. And I landed on James Moriarty from Sherlock Holmes. I mean, when you think of the brain guy,
Sure.
That was him. And then it was like, okay, what if he had scientists that he hired? Who would those scientists be? And it's like, okay, well, who's your mad scientist archetypes? You've got Frankenstein, you've got Dr. Moreau from the Island of Dr. Moreau, you've got Herbert West from the Reanimator, Dr. Jekyll. It's like, what if they worked for this company and they were basically engineers? And then I started looking at that, and it was like, okay, but what I want to do about Frankenstein is like, I don't want to make it Victor Frankenstein. I want to make it Victoria Frankenstein. And how she got her start was she couldn't have children. So she went into her whole studies was fertility and figuring out how to fix, women had fertility issues. And this was like and basically she was, Moriarty found her and said, hey, I've got an opportunity for you where, you want to be a mother and you want to be this, come over and work for me. And he kind of basically used all these different archetypes to start creating these monsters. So you have her kind of not the bad guy. She comes into this with the idea that I'm going to help the world. I'm going to cure infertility with this what we build and what we do. And the whole time Moriarty's like, nope, I've got other plans for this whole process. So that's kind of her architect. He's basically creating monsters, and I'm going to sell them as soldiers. I'm going to, all these kind of archetype things. And then I kind of pitched Dr. Moreau because, the classic stories that he was involved in were always about kind of man animals. So I'm like, what if he was the one that created the first werewolf archetype? So it's like, okay, he's basically his area of expertise is gene splicing. So creating man were creatures, whatever. And in this case, it's werewolves, but there could be all this stuff. And he's kind of like the sadist of the group. And then you've got this other archetype that is Dr. Jekyll. And he's more like his area of expertise was basically like rage drugs and things like that, hormonal change stuff. But he used to work at this company, had a falling out with Moriarty and kind of disappeared. But he kind of set all this stuff in motion. So what I'm getting to in this story is like taking all these classic characters and kind of reshuffling them, modernizing them, bringing them to what would it look like in today's world if those people existed? What would their areas of expertise be? I had a lot of fun with that because, okay, that makes sense. But it's like, okay, what other characters can I pull from? And I'm like, okay, well, I want to have as my main good guy, if you will, it's got to be Dr. Watson. In Sherlock, in some of the classic stories of Sherlock, there was one where Sherlock and Moriarty fell off a cliff and supposedly Sherlock died, but it was kind of a staged thing. Well, in my world, that really happened. So Sherlock is dead. Moriarty gets accused of killing him, but because he's in this role of being this great biotech guy, he gets off from it. But he ends up disgracing Watson. So Watson's kind of like a drunkard. He's lost his medical license, and he's basically just barely getting by with life. And he's got this death wish, and he's like, he really wants to see Moriarty go down. So anyways, it kind of starts, he forms a team. He meets up with Van Helsing, who is now, when I visualize him as Woody Harrelson, because in my mind, he was a doctor that basically lost his license, and now he's like a conspiracy blogger. So he's talking about all these things going on behind the scenes and all this stuff like that. And nobody really believes him. And then, so there's that. I've tied in some of the H.P. Lovecraft mythos. So Henry Armitage, who was like a professor that did all the maps and all this, he's part of that group. And then I kind of went to left field and I was like, okay, I need another character that's kind of like the reader, who's going to represent the reader kind of sitting there and doing that. And I went with, from the book Little Women, They're the youngest girl in Little Women. Her name was Jo March, and she was kind of like very independent, very much like. And granted, that book's set in a whole different timeline, which is like, I don't need a man, I don't need to be married, I don't have to do all this prim and proper stuff. So she's kind of like one of my main characters in the book, and she's like a reporter. Well, she starts out as kind of like a blogger in that. So she kind of teams up with all these people. So the whole story is they're going after these characters. They're trying to stop what's going on. You've got Victoria Frankenstein basically feels like the mother to these creatures. So she's trying to humanize them, realizes that these creatures have a conscience. They're not just, clones and they're just out there. Every time that they kill something, they like freak out because they don't know how to handle the dealing with that. Yeah, so there's a lot of themes here where you've got a motherless mother who sees these creations as her children, and she's trying and she's powerless to raise them correctly, if you will. They're kind of under the control of an evil person that's looking to use them to weaponize. It's weaponizing love. Let's just call it that. So the whole story is kind of around that, is about they have a choice. They don't have to be this way. People can perceive them as monsters, or they can perceive them as something else. It's really their destiny. And I know I started going down the rabbit hole of basically I could have sat here and told you the whole book, but I kind of wanted to do like a Star Wars trilogy or a Return or a Lord of the Rings trilogy, which that's very lofty goals, and obviously I didn't get to that point with the amount of words I put in there. But that was kind of my idea, was to do like a 3-part arc where it kind of sets these things up, and each book kind of introduces new characters. So part of the fun for me was looking at these stories and going, where can I slide in a character? Because what's kind of fun is your reader already knows these characters, right? I mean, most of the characters I've mentioned, people will be like, oh yeah, that's from this, that. And that gives you a little bit of the backstory, but I tried to stay true to the character. But like in the case of Victor Frankenstein, I've changed the gender. I kind of give the backstories different. But I mean, a lot of the same things are there, but like I try to kind of give them their motivation. So they're not these hollow characters. It's like, okay, we know what her motivation is here. I not to get too far into it, but yeah, every book I introduce more characters, and you're like, oh, at least for me, it was like, oh, that was fun to bring this person in. And even some of the background characters, it's almost like Easter eggs for me. Like it was a movie, it's like, wait a minute, that person's name, why does that sound familiar? And you go, oh, wow, that's the character that was some person in the Invisible Man book. But I try to ground them to where it's like, okay, whatever role they played in their original source material makes sense over here. I reference things from Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland, just all kind of all over the things. So part of it was, yeah, I wanted to write a horror story. I wanted to have basically a team of classic characters. I wanted to kind of reimagine the classic horror archetypes of specifically like the werewolf, Frankenstein's monster, vampires, and even like Creature from the Black Lagoon. But technically you can't use Creature from the Black Lagoon. That's still licensed. That whole character design is licensed, but the concept of an amphibious creature is good. So we're good there. I refer to them as Leviathans in my story, but it's kind of along the same lines. But yeah, it's and kind of give them kind of they're just not these mindless monsters. It's like, and then how does society accept them? Suddenly because this isn't like, oh, we've had all these ancient legends of these things and now they've come to light. It's like the new thing. And even like some of the things with the myths I left out, like, so my vampires, they're light sensitive, but it doesn't bother them that much. They were genetically modified to basically feed off blood, and they can do pheromones and stuff that they send out that'll basically make their prey docile. But as far as like the religious elements and things like that, I left all that out. Anything that I really couldn't scientifically explain, and I don't know how good of a job I did with the science of it, because at some point it's like you just got to suspend belief and move on.
Sure, yeah.
But I kind of wanted to. I didn't want it to be like a Star Trek technical, but more like Star Wars. It could just throw out some terms and people just be like, "Oh yeah, he kind of knows what's going on. All right, we'll just keep moving on." So yeah, that was the Primacy stuff.
And all these short stories, you put them together as a sort of a literary universe. You mentioned that in your submission too, and I'm just wanting to make sure that, like, is everything you've written a part of this universe, or is it just this Primacy?
No. So I have a Primacy book 1, 2, and 3, and that's pretty much the core of what I just described. I've got some ideas for even expanding that further, but that was kind of when I started. I wanted to get from point A to point B. Yeah, I kind of even figured out who I was going to lose along the way, who I was going to gain, what the arc was, all that stuff. Try to do it the right way where it actually mapped this stuff out. But then along with, so that's in its own world. And then I have another book that's called The Siege of Aegis, which is more of a science fantasy. It's kind of like a combination of Star Trek meets Army of Darkness, and that story's been in my head since I was a kid, where I always thought it would be cool. And I know the idea has been done, but it was, hey, what if you had, spacefaring people with that kind of technology crash on a planet that was basically medieval, but they had dragons and they had zombies and stuff like that. How would that work? You basically technology versus magic. So I kind of expanded on the idea, got to introduce some of the AI elements. So like it's pretty far in the future from our Earth. The ships are all run by AI to the point where you can't distinguish the AI from people. The crew treats the AI as just another crew member. And she's snarky as hell, likes to cuss, likes to play music. She likes to play very ancient classical music during stressful times, which is my scapegoat to be able to pull in like songs from Metallica and stuff, which, I think I said it like 300 years in the future, 300 years. So it's like, I wanted to be able to say like she could pull from the archives, but because you can't quote lots of song lyrics, the way I got around it was that she pulled these from old archives that are broken up. So she's only got bits and pieces of things. So it's like, oh, here's a riff from this song. Supposedly it was called this. It's called this. So I had some fun with that. Kind of trying to do the whole James Gunn thing with how he did with Guardians of the Galaxy, where it feels like that movie is a lot of fun, but it's based around the soundtrack. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to do something with that where I could incorporate writing a book that you could almost play a soundtrack along with it, and it would give you kind of the vibe of the story. Oh, they're getting ready to go into battle. What would that song sound like? Or what would this scenario and things like that. So that's potentially a series. I wrote the first story. It's building into a bigger universe. The big concept is basically Earth was seeded by some ancient civilization. We were just basically an experiment. They've done this in multiple places. And one of the things they left behind was basically their version of an AI to kind of terraform and to control. Just so happens that AI terraforming is what evolved into what we know as the Roman gods. So like Zeus, Ares, all those are this entity that was left behind by this ancient civilization. There's other planets that have that as well. So when this team of spacefaring people, they're like basically soldiers. They're checking out of an anomaly. They go through the wormhole. Some of that's pretty standard fare. They land on this planet and they think they're in some medieval place. It's not. It was also potentially terraformed by this. Basically, they end up being. You realize that, oh, wait a minute, okay. This civilization is just a cousin to Earth. They've evolved differently. And it's like when they hear the name Zeus, they realize, oh, we've heard that too. And it's like, well, how would you know that? And it's like, oh, well, it's kind of start making those comparisons that there's something bigger than that. But yeah, was a fun one to do. But that leans more on the science fiction fantasy side. That was probably the closest I dabbled to like Dungeons and Dragons stuff. There was a time when I used to play the shit out of that, but yeah.
Co-host is real big into that game.
What's that?
I said my co-host is real big into that. I'm too old.
Yeah.
I'm too old and tired to learn now.
I did when I was younger. I don't so much anymore. And that's maybe where some of these ideas came from. But yeah, and then so those are probably the stuff I've talked about there. Is probably the longer format stuff I do, but still, I think the Siege of Aegis is right around maybe 35,000 words. So yeah, I haven't written anything much bigger than that. I've tried, but it just felt like it was done when I got to the point where it was at. And it's like I didn't really want to go the filler route. I'm like, all right, if the story can be told with 35, I guess this isn't the story I'm gonna this isn't gonna be my version of The Stand. Not there yet.
Sure. And I mean, I think that starting off with a little bit shorter form or whatnot, it definitely gives your writing some appeal, and you do have a good narrative voice and everything from the sample that you sent us. You are a gifted writer, and people can check you out if you are looking at. I'm going to go ahead and guess that you have like ebook formats for everything that you've got out there right now,
yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So people check that out. It's something they can read in an afternoon. If they like it, they can get several more from you and everything while you build up to getting to that point. Yeah, I'm a big proponent of, not stretching a story out and making it stay beyond its welcome. The novel I've published is a little bit short as far as novels go, as far as like for a fantasy length, by a few thousand words and everything, but I was done with it. I didn't really know what else to do, and I wasn't going to force anything to happen just to make it longer. I think that, as you keep doing it and whatnot, you'll be able to come up with all of the plot points that can keep your story moving. You'll get there, but right now, people can check out your writing while you're doing your short form. Ryan, he's got a very, very long book that it's his not yet magnum opus. He won't let go of it, but it is a really good read. But the only thing that he's put out so far, just because, and I had a hand in getting him to publish it, was like, you gotta put something out there, like let people know you know how to write. And he put out a short story called In Pursuit of Death, and that was also a very good read. But now, at least, there's a sample of him out there. So
Right.
I definitely think you're doing a smart thing there, as far as like getting your ideas out while the getting's good, and press them all together when you get done with your, MonsterVerse type thing in that story, which I love. I really like the sound of Victoria Frankenstein. I think she's a good, what'd you say that the road to hell was paved with again? Type character. And that's always,
Yeah.
I think that, I don't want to call her a villain, but like accidental.
She has an arc where it's it's like she goes to the road to hell to good intentions, but it's like her thought process is, hey, I dealt with infertility and going, as a mother that couldn't bear children, she's got all that emotional trauma. And it's like, but she's also a scientist and has figured out ways to kind of get around that. And then you've got, the Moriarty character that comes in and goes, I can finance this. We can make this a thing. You'll be helping so many people, and kind of sold it that way. And then, and she basically gets sucked into it and realizes, it's a classic story you hear all the time, right? It's part of her arc is how does she redeem herself, and how does she kind of figure out the best ways to handle this. And it goes back and forth. I mean, there's definitely some characters in that book that you're just like, I wish that person just dies. I'm just done with them. So there's some of the characters I lean in. There's some characters you're like, why is he still alive? This guy's an asshole.
I hate those characters.
It's like, give it time.
They always make
figure
it
it out.
right before the end, and I hate it. It's a
Well,
cheat.
that was the thing too. I was trying to avoid tropes as much as possible, but that's is impossible. So it was like, I don't want to make it like, oh, here it is. This is what this is going to be. So
Sure.
I tried to come up with some twists and turns along the way, whether it's changing the characters, humanizing some characters that you wouldn't expect, and even kind of how it ends up. Um, but again, I definitely was using kind of a roadmap of like the Star Wars trilogy, where you have the New Hope, and then you've got the second book, the second movie, but Empire Strikes Back is like, I think arguably the best one out there. But I mean, it's just a downer, right? I mean, just everything. They just get their asses handed to them.
Sure.
And so that was kind of like what I wanted. And then it was like, okay, then there's a redeeming arc. And then, it's nice bookends, but we'll see.
So, Miles, you've given everybody a really good idea of what they can expect from your stories. Where can they go find them if they are a horror reader and they want to check out your alternate versions of what's been out there for a long time, a fresh take, if you will?
Sure. So I have my own website. It's milescarnegie.com. So milescarnegie.com. You go out there, that's got all my books and everything and links. You can also basically any of the major ebook retailers, so Amazon, Apple. I try to put everything out there as well, but if you go to my main website, it's got links to all that out there. Some of them are paperback as well. I haven't done much with hardcover yet. That's kind of more of I think a future thing once I see how this goes. But yeah, I got a blog that I put out there, which is a lot of it is me just talking about how horrible of a social media person I am. I'm a one-man show, but I really hate to be that. Hey, look at me, look what I'm doing, and I'm not an influencer. I struggle with Facebook and all that just because there's just so many people doing it. I don't know. I don't like to talk about myself. That's what the books are for. But anyways, I do have a Facebook. I have Instagram, I think, is out there too. I don't have much out there, but the best place is milescarnegie.com. That's where I'll put my rants.
Great.
In my books.
Well, we'll put the links to all those in the video description below.
Perfect.
So that everybody can follow you. Do you have anything that you are predicting that's going to be coming out in the next few months or up to a year?
There's some other side stories I'd like to pursue with Primacy. I mean, there's the initial trilogy, but I think there's still a lot of life left in those characters, either as a prequel, as totally independent novels. The Siege of Aegis, I see that as a trilogy as well. I've just finished the first book of that. I need to get back and kind of start revisiting that because that's another pretty fertile ground to go after. Other than that, honestly, it's kind of when the mood hits me. Who knows? I may write another short story book. The one short story book I did called User Agreements, I wrote in about a month, and it was basically all about AI. I'm in computer science as my real job, so I have some thoughts about that. But anyways,
I gotcha. They type so fast.
You're right. Yeah. That was kind of the funny part of it. It's like they start to get really good at responding to you and all this stuff, and they're your friends, and they get paid better with quotas. It's just very, very kind of Black Mirror stuff. I definitely like that kind of vibe.
Sure,
a lot of material there. I mean, you just watch the news, and I can be like, okay, I can write a story about this now.
Yeah. Well, don't worry. Times can only be unprecedented for so long. Well, is there anything? We're about out of time, so is there anything that you want to say to everybody before we cut this?
Appreciate everybody watching. Please go out if you're interested. Go out to my site. Like I said, I'm a one-man show, but I try to read all the comments and stuff. And if you got something to say or questions, be happy to respond to you. Just trying to be a good steward in the reading community. And yeah, I appreciate everybody watching and that.
Great. I appreciate you coming on and talking to everybody.
Absolutely.
For everybody, if there's a question that you wanted to ask Miles that I didn't ask, you can post it down in the comments below once the video posts. I'm sure he'll keep an eye on the video and get back to you with an answer. Please like, follow, comment, subscribe, all of those good things that help us get into the algorithm and keep growing the network so that we can help out all the emerging authors and storytellers that are out there. I am thinking that we are just about set, and I'm going to go ahead and fade to black.